One night in February, I got to the gas station and saw a girl around my age parked on the side, looking under her hood. She made eye contact with me and I offered help. The girl was around 5.5 feet tall, with dark hair, and was really sweet. She asked if I knew anything about cars, and like most men my age, I acted like the reincarnation of Henry Ford. After about 5 minutes of searching, I found a wire that had been severed and showed her. She starts cursing a bit, and I have to admit, it was cute. I told her I'd give you a ride home, but she interrupts me and finished with, "You ran here? I've seen you a few times." Being a young guy, I got my hopes up after that comment. "I can walk you home if you'd like," I said. She smiled and said she lived 10 blocks away and always notices me coming from the opposite direction. "I just don't want to impose," she said. "What else have I got to do at 2:30 in the morning?" I asked with a smile, to which she smiled back. At that moment, a truck pulled up and asked if we needed help. The girl, who at this point told me her name was Sarah, told him that her car broke down, but she was fine and I'm walking her home. The man laughed in a pretty rude way and said, "Walk? Sweetie, I'll just give you a ride home." Sarah looked at me for a second with the kind of look that makes you feel uncomfortable. After a minute or so, she agreed to take the ride from the guy. I asked her if I can give her my number so I know she gets home safe. She handed me her phone, and I typed in my number, and she went on her way. I went inside the gas station, got my drink, and headed home, nervously waiting for her call that never came. I figured she just took it to be polite. That's why she opted for the ride home, so I went to bed. The next few days went by normal, didn't see her again, but her car sat in the same spot. Sure, I had got my hopes up, but I wasn't crushed. Then I finally see her car gone. It was kind of a relief because it means I won't awkwardly see her working on it. I go inside and get a drink and go to pay. At the news rack I see an article. A girl in her 20s was found basically destroyed. The police had a hard time identifying her because of the damage. The only clue they had were some large truck tires near the scene. I asked the cashier, who was the same one from the night this all happened, when Sarah had gotten the car. I was certain that I was just overreacting, but I was curious. The cashier said a man in a truck used tow cables and pulled it, but he had her keys though. I tried to convince myself that I'm just connecting unrelated dots. The whole walk home, I thought about it, and felt guilty. Then I realized the wire had a clean cut, like a wire cutter did it. Originally, I assumed it just snagged on something or an animal bit it. I'm not sure if what I think happened really did happen. I feel guilty though, like I allowed it to happen. It keeps me up. I still go on the walks, hoping to see her, but I haven't yet. So my girlfriend and I were pulling an all-nighter, being the computer addicts that we are. It was around 7 in the morning when we decided to run to the gas station just outside of our neighborhood for some energy drinks. We pulled up and parked on the side of the building, away from the busy pumps. She goes in by herself to grab the drinks, and as she enters, I see a man at the corner of the store, leaned up against the wall, drinking something from a paper bag. He eyes her as she enters and then flicks his attention to me. I get an uneasy feeling but stay calm because I knew she shouldn't be more than a few minutes. Sitting there, alone, he edged closer and closer to the car. I start to get a little creeped out, to be honest. My girlfriend finally returns, but I can't help but notice that the guy is still watching us. As soon as my girlfriend turns the corner towards me, the guy starts following her. I freeze up. I have no idea what this guy is going to do. My girlfriend walks faster. The guy keeps pace. And right as she reaches for the car door, the guy makes a fast grabbing motion towards her throat. I throw open my car door and start blaring the car horn. The guy scowls at me and backs up to the wall. My girlfriend jumped in the car and we peeled away. I could see him as we drove away, his head down and muttering to himself. I had just finished visiting one of my friends from work and was on my way home. My low fuel notification had just sounded and the light appeared, letting me know I was low. I lived in the next town over from where my job was and where my friend lived. It was a 30-mile distance or so, so I decided to stop at the station and fill up. The gas station was more or less off to itself, with the only other building being a tire shop across the street that had closed for the evening. I pulled in and proceeded to pump gas. There was another car parked up by the station, so it was just that person and I as patrons at the moment. It takes around $50 to fill up my car. It was around the $15 mark when an old Ford truck pulled up on the other side of the pump to get gas. Or that was what I assumed. A man exited the truck and approached me, asking if he could borrow money for gas. I explained to him that I had no cash and only card, and also that I was in no position at the time to be lending money to people for gas. I had just paid to have the transmission fixed on my car, so I was strapped for money at the time. He accepted the answer and walked back to his truck. Thinking nothing of the situation, I turned to face the store while finishing to pump my gas, so I didn't have to see him anymore. I don't know how long it had been. It couldn't have been more than a few seconds. But after turning the other direction, I felt what seemed like a near head-busting blow to the back of my head, and I fell to the ground. I turned to see the man standing over me. He then demanded that I hand over my card. Retaliation or fleeing from the situation wasn't an option at this point. I had no weapon, and he was still literally standing over me. So, I reached into my pocket and handed him my card. He proceeded to walk to the other side of the pump, and I hear sounds and noises like he was using the card for gas. I had just begun to get up off the ground when he quickly moved around to me again and yelled to stay on the ground. I seated myself back on the pavement of the station, trying to figure out what was I going to do, and what was this guy planning on doing. I checked my pocket for my phone. Nope. It was in my car. It was obvious now that he was pumping gas. Around 2 minutes had passed by this point, and I could faintly hear sirens in the distance, and it sounded like they were getting closer. The sound seemed to send the man into a panic, at which time I could hear him entering his truck. He started it and sped away. I immediately jumped up and grabbed my phone to call 911. The operator told me that police were already en route to the location. Apparently the store clerk had made the call. The police found the truck abandoned in the middle of a side street 12 blocks away from the store, only a few moments later, with my card still lying on the passenger side seat. I had remained at the store and the police returned my card to me. The 911 operator had also dispatched an ambulance in case I was injured, but I refused the service as I felt fine, just a bad headache. I thanked the clerk afterward and headed home, making it there safe and sound.